What is up, everybody? It is Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Do know that I am the host of Epic Conversations, and the Dr. Vibe Show is the home of Epic Conversations. Also know that I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. We have, longtime friend and a brand new friend on the Dr. Vibe Show here tonight on the home of Epic Conversations. So just to give a little background, this year, Canada celebrates its 150th anniversary, and the phenomenal website byblacks.com would also like to celebrate Black Canadian fathers that provide the necessary emotional and financial support for their children daily. That being said, the Father Project will showcase over 150 Black fathers from across Greater Toronto and highlight their perspective on being a dad in this modern day society. In the profiles, each father will reflect on their relationship with their own father and how that has affected their relationship with their children. The men selected will be drawn from various walks of life, showing the diversity in ethnic background, marital status, sexuality, religious beliefs, and socioeconomic standing within Canada. They want to demonstrate and celebrate inclusivity in parenting. So we have two of the participants of the Father Project live with us. One of them I've known for a long time. The other one I'm just meeting tonight. So the person I do know is RogerDundas. What is up, Roger?
Hey, Dr. Vibe. Thank you for having me on tonight, as usual.
Well, it's you and a friend, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So
I come heavy tonight.
Good. Well, you know what? Let's introduce your friend and have your friend give a little background about himself.
Excellent. Mello, the floor is yours.
Yes, brother. Thank you very much. Dr. Vibe, your memory is very short. You may recall that I was on your program maybe a year ago with Jonathan Juiceman Shaw. Do you remember that?
I remember it faintly. Now, the only out I have, I do about 5 conversations a week. So if that's a year ago, that's 300 conversations ago. So just go there.
I understand. But I would think that a person of my caliber would be outstanding and memorable.
You know what? Everyone is outstanding. Everyone who comes on is outstanding.
Well, allow me to reintroduce myself. It's Mello IO here.
My name is
I met Roger through this project, and I'm very excited and honored to be a part of something that's very special and that celebrates fatherhood, which I think is highly underappreciated. And so I'm happy to be part of something that elevates the status and celebrates the experience of fatherhood. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And Roger, why don't you give a little introduction about yourself?
Well, my name is RogerDundas. Most people know me as the creative director of 404 Media Group, which is a branding, event management, and publicity company with over 100 clients. But I'm also the publisher and business development manager for byblacks.com, which is now Canada's #1 online magazine focused exclusively on Black Canadians.
Excellent. So this is quite the powerhouse 1-2 in regards to this. So let me ask, I'm going to go to Mello first. Let me go to Roger first. Roger, where did the thought process come to launch the Father Project?
Interestingly, it came from one of our colleagues up in Ottawa. Her name is Sarah Onyango. I hope I pronounced her last name correctly. And she had seen a project happening in DC, I believe, and it involved 100 men telling their stories of fatherhood by video. So she said, you know what? This is something I think that ByBlacks, and she's a very big supporter of ours, she said, this is something I think that ByBlacks should be doing in Canada as well. And I said, you know, it's a fantastic idea. We didn't have the budget to do 100 videos, but I said, you know, we could capture 150 stories to celebrate and tie in with the Canada 150 celebration. I knew that we could find over 150 fathers that are great dads within the community, within the GTA, and have them tell their stories themselves, and also then select a few people of that 150. Let's take a sample of that and do a future video series, and kind of put it into a documentary. So it started with Sarah.
Two interesting conversation pieces. I'm aware of that series in Washington. I think I may have interviewed or had a conversation on this platform with that person. But second of all, do you find it interesting that a lady approached that idea to you?
Yeah, you know what? I think masculinity and fatherhood is something that's downplayed and not recognized throughout the world. I would say that when you look at the popularity of Mother's Day versus the unpopularity of Father's Day, I shouldn't say unpopular, but it is less popular than Mother's Day, and mothers get all the credit, and I would say sometimes rightfully so, because they do bear the brunt most times of taking care of the children. But we have a new generation of fathers now that are very involved in the raising of children, and I don't think that this new generation of fathers are getting their full credit.
Okay. Mello, when Roger approached you about this initiative, what was your first reaction?
Well, it was a no-brainer. No-brainer. I just thought long overdue, and I understand the importance of this particular year commemorating 150 years of Canada's nationhood, but I think this is long overdue. This is something we should be doing, from the get-go, and I'm happy that we've finally arrived, and so I was quite happy and pleased to be invited to be part of this, and there was no question in my mind.
Okay. Mel, I'm going to stick with you a little bit on this conversation. What did you get, good or bad, from the way your father treated you or has treated you if he's still alive? How was that relationship, and how has it changed or developed over the years?
How much time do you have?
Well, Roger said only a certain amount of time. I can go for long, but Roger only said a certain amount of time. So
Mello, before you start your story, I would say that if there's no time at the end, I am comfortable, because his story is powerful. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me preface by making two disclaimers here. First of all, my father has been deceased. He transitioned about 3 years ago.
Mike, okay.
And if he was here, he would give you his version. So what I'm sharing with you is going to be my version. And I just want to make that clear. He would have his perspective, which necessarily would be different from mine. The second disclaimer is that my father has 4 other children. And if you were to speak to them, they would also give you their unique perspective. So each of us had our own unique connection with our father, and mine is unique to me. So I just want to make that clear. It's not necessarily the truth, but it's my truth. So I think I went through about 3 or 4 phases with my father. At birth, of course, when I was born, I had very little consciousness of what was happening. And I was born in a rather unstable situation. I was one of those arrivals that was unexpected. And so there was, I think, a great deal of uncertainty and anxiety among my parents who were not married. And my father, in his wisdom, thought that I would be better placed elsewhere beyond the care of my biological mother. So he took me away and transplanted me in a whole different environment. And this is in Jamaica, where I was born and grew up. And I grew up in an environment that was remotely removed from my maternal mother and my bloodline. And so I didn't grow up with my father being around. He was one of those distant dads that would visit periodically. And I recall having this wish that I could see him more often. And as I became more conscious, I loved and yearned for his presence. You know, it would be like Santa Claus coming when he arrived. A moment of joy and happiness to see him. We'd spend some good time together, and I loved being in his company, and I just hated whenever he left. So there was that phase where I had this yearning to be in my dad's company, and I came to know my father not through his presence, but through his absence. And I had this appetite, this yearning, this hunger to be in his company. And as a result of that, I think I put him on a pedestal. You know, he was like a hero. He was my ideal that I would just long and love to be in his presence. But as I grew up and I realized I saw him less and less frequently, then he became irrelevant to my experience. He became less and less important, and I started to realize that my relationship with him was very thin. And so I moved into a phase where I became indifferent. He became, as it were, irrelevant and inconsequential. And then I moved into another phase, which was, I think, rage and anger, because I weighed him in the balance and I found him wanting. I became very judgmental, and I in my estimation, I thought that he was a poor father. I thought that he was unavailable. I went to school. He was never present at any of my games. I participated in athletics. I had serious interest in academics. And in neither of those instances were he ever present to support or to celebrate any of my achievements. And so that for me was a deficiency. And so I saw him as a deficient dad. And I made a commitment not to be the father that my father was to me. And that decision has stuck with me ever since. But I must say that that's not the way it ended. My father became seriously ill in the latter part of his life, and there was a shift in our relationship that occurred during that time. The shift actually took place prior to that. It took place when I had my own child. I had the privilege of giving birth along with her mother to a beautiful girl who is now a woman. She's 20 years old, and I love her to death, which is what motivated me to participate in this. But when I had my daughter, it really changed my perspective, because I started to appreciate what it was like to be a father. And I started to become more empathic about my dad. I started to appreciate what his experience might have been like as a father, raising 5 or 6 children. I only had one, and I realized that it actually takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of love, care, commitment, compassion, and it could be that it was just too much for him, and that he had a whole different ball game that he was playing. But I started to understand him a little bit more, and I actually approached him after I had my own girl, and I reached out to him, and he was hesitant, of course, because he thought I was coming, with criticism and judgment. But we sat around a bar, around a few bottles of beer, and I told him, I said, look, listen, I just want to thank you for being the father that you were to me, and that I appreciated all the efforts that you made to be a dad. It may not have been sufficient, but it was the best that you could do, And as a result of that, I just want to show and express my gratitude for being a father to me. And you could see his defense drop. You could see him deflate and, as it were, become very relaxed. It was almost rubber-like. I think he was just about to fall off the stool. But that to me was an awakening, and it was part of our reconciliation. So when he became ill, I was already in a position to help to support him in his moment of need. What happened was he fell back and broke his neck and became a paraplegic, helpless. And here was a man that was footloose and fancy-free. He was one of those happy-go-lucky guys, very gregarious, outgoing, fairly independent, and then suddenly he had the rug pulled from under his feet, and now he was helpless and completely dependent on other people. So it was a shock for him, a heavy shock and a heavy blow. But I went to his side to care for him, and for 3 years, we nursed him in the hospital. And here's a rub. The father that I wanted started to emerge during this time. He was like a captive audience. I knew where he was. He was in a hospital, so he wasn't going anywhere. And I would visit him quite frequently, and we'd sit down and we'd have chats together. And I suddenly realized in those moments that this is the father that I wanted, somebody I could sit with and talk to and have frank, open conversations with, man to man. And it was a beautiful experience. And so that's really how it ended. And that's the last phase, and that's really how I would like to remember my father. That's the kind of inheritance I would like to be able to recall and celebrate with him. Those moments when we sat down and looked each other in the eye and spoke man to man, heart to heart. So that's my story in a nutshell. And so I moved from esteeming my father and putting him on a pedestal like an idealist to demonizing him. And then now I think I'm in a position where I can appreciate him more realistically and love him for who he is and not for what I wanted him to be. And to me, that's a very profound awakening. And, that has informed how I conduct myself and how I relate to my own child and how I love and embrace her and watch her grow up.
Excellent. Great story. And it seems that your relationship with your father went through a birth, death, and resurrection, so to speak.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Roger, I know a little bit of your story with your father. In fact, now that you've shared a lot with me, what was your relationship with your father like?
It's funny. It's a somewhat similar story, but not. So, I'm the last of 5 children for my mother and my father, and at 10 years old, my parents separated. So up until that point, I would say that my life was pretty much stereotypical. My father was a very good businessman. He had a lot of, my family had a lot of friends, a good social circle. We had people around all the time, lots of cousins, everything, right? So it's a very involved life. Grades are good, a lot of extracurricular activities, so I would say a typical life. And then that just got ripped from me at age 10. Just as I was entering high school. So pretty much we ended up leaving the home and living, all 5 children eventually ended up living with my mother and not with my father. So as I said in a previous interview, that I think looking back on it, it affected the 2 youngest children the most. which was my brother and I. And our older siblings were all girls. So they were 18, 17, and 15, I believe. So they were I wouldn't say they were fully matured, but they were more getting ahead with what they were doing. You know, they had done reasonably well in school and all that. What I found with the separation of the family is that it wasn't handled well, in my opinion. My father, instead of trying to be present, he was mostly absent. So he wasn't really around at that point. I think pretty much he would have, done whatever financial support that he needed to do. But from an emotional and, being there perspective, he wasn't there. So he wasn't there for 6 years. And during that 6-year time, I think it just went from bad to worse. Went from very good grades to, basically an A student to an F student. Started smoking weed at 12 years old, started drinking heavily, I remember at 14 I'd be playing domino for beer. 14 years old, right? At the community center in Mona. So, that was pretty much the life that was going on, and, started failing everything. And, I even ran away from home once. I remember police picking me up on the street once for whatever disorderly conduct. I don't remember what I was doing, but out of control. And then magically, at age 16, I ended up going back to live with my father, because my mother, by now, everybody had moved out of the house, all the 4 older siblings, and I was the only one left. And she said, she was having some troubles on herself, and she asked my father to take me back, and he did. So I think in his mind, he probably thought, at 16, he's going to be 18, and then he's gone. But I ended up living with him until I was 25. And I can say, although the relationship with him was not a good one at that time, he provided a certain level of stability, because he was okay. So he paid for schooling and kind of, created a framework for me to get back into studying and supporting that studying. And really he tried to be very strict and, regimental and disciplined, which, looking back on it, it wasn't the nicest feeling, but it was the best thing to try and instill some form of responsibility. Because as I said, at that point, I was totally irresponsible. So, we didn't part at 25. We didn't part on good terms. But I tell you something: the day I moved out of his house, we became best friends. So, and we've remained close from that point until now. So it changed, the dynamic changed. So at first I didn't really, as a youngster, you have a father that he's involved in your life. We go fishing, we go on trips, this, that, we do those things. Then he disappeared, kind of, for 6 years. And then he appeared and he stayed from that point onward. So that's why I said it's similar but not, right? So he's still alive now. He's retired recently, and he has Parkinson's.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's I feel for him, because he tells me, he gives it to me straight, boy, he's telling me, like, when you have Parkinson's, it's hard to just button a shirt.
True.
Things that you take for granted, to eat.
Yep.
Everything is changed. You can't drive, so now you have to rely on other people to do. And he was a very independent and ambitious person who did it all. Strong man, So it's rough to see him now at this point. So when I compare that upbringing to how I'm dealing with my children, is that I never want my children to feel like I am not there, that I don't have any time for them, that they're not important, right? So these are the type of feelings I had. Like I felt like I wasn't important to him, right? So I never ever want my children to get that feeling or have that feeling. I want them to feel a sense of importance and love, and feel loved.
Okay.
So,
Well,
if I may,
go ahead, Mello.
This is the difference where in our generation, I think we were marginal to our fathers' lives. We were like a second thought or an afterthought, at least so it seemed. Whereas in our generation, we treat our children are like the center of our universe. So that's an interesting difference.
Well, by listening to both your stories, one of the common threads I seen was the improvement of the relationship with your fathers came when a major event happened.
Yeah, catastrophe.
Yeah, some sort of a shift happened in your relationship with your father, Mello, and yours with your dad. When that shift happened, it seemed to enhance the relationship for the positive.
Right.
So,
and as I listened to Roger's story, I realize our dads are like teachers to us.
Yeah.
But not necessarily in the conventional way.
Yep.
I would have wanted my father to be like an elder who imparted great wisdom to me. That didn't happen, but through his life example,
right,
I was able to learn a great deal. And so in that sense, he was a great teacher. And I could see Roger had a similar experience with his dad, where his dad is now becoming a teacher in some way.
Learning through actions more than words. Big time.
Absolutely.
Big time.
Absolutely.
Well, and our time is running thin already, so I have the challenge in my mind to give a final conversation piece. So I've found one. I hope this one works. For both of you, when you look at the state of Black fatherhood, what are the biggest misconceptions, but what are all the biggest concerns you have? So either one can contribute. Actually, I'll take Mello. You go first.
Yeah, I think the idea of and the concept of Black masculinity is something that we need to examine and explore a little bit more. In my father's generation, it was not, I think it was taboo for a father to, let's say, change a baby's diaper or to, take care of a baby in a very nurturing way. It was the assigned duty, of the woman to perform those functions. And to me, Black masculinity involves that kind of nurturing quality, that sensitivity, that care, that love that allows you to be affectionate with your children in ways that are meaningful. I think men lose an opportunity to connect and empower their children when they divorce themselves and kind of become distant and cold on the basis that that's how a man should behave without feeling. So that, I think, is something we need to take a look at and have a much greater balance in terms of what Black masculinity means and how it shows up.
Okay. And before I turn it over to Roger, if people want to, the Dr. Vibe Show did about 1.5 years worth conversations with a gentleman named Dr. Charles Corporal, where we did a series called H to H, from Black hyper masculinity to Black healthy masculinity. So certainly go on the website and catch some of those conversations. Roger, in your mind, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about Black fatherhood, and what are your biggest concerns about Black fatherhood?
I think the number one misconception based on the Black fathers that I'm interacting with is that we are not supporting our children. We are deadbeat dads. So a lot of people look on and they think that, oh yes, he's Black, he's a father, he's not at home, right? He's not doing anything for his kids. So there's that misconception, I find, and even in speaking to some of the single women, right? I find that a lot of fathers are fighting them to get their kids and spend time with their kids, but that's not the way how it's portrayed, really. You know, there's a lot of obstacles that they have to go through and hoops, and you know, the system does not favor men in a parental situation, so the woman has the upper hand for sure. And I would say in some cases that's valid. It is valid in some cases, but where the man is definitely showing an obvious interest to partake in the life of the child, you know, I think more work needs to be done there. Right?
Right.
So that would be the misconception and, you know, some of the challenges that I'm seeing. So there have been a few men, and just to, you know, I can talk open, I'm not going to say who, but there have been a few men who were approached to be a part of the project, and they bowed out because of, you know, either current family issues or childcare or current custody battles, and they said, you know what, I just don't want to put my situation on full blast like that.
I understand. Had an epic conversation a few years ago with a gentleman who was in the midst of fighting for custody of his kids via the court system. And I've talked to a number of lawyers about that subject, and they almost unanimously say to me, it is favored for the lady, rightly or wrongly, but not in every situation is it right. So
Yeah.
we'll leave it there. Before we let both of you go, Mello, do you have any final words you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I just want to wish all the fathers out there, fathers to be and fathers who are, happy Father's Day. Every day is Father's Day, and that our children are our greatest gifts, and that our own fathers also are a gift to us, whether it may appear that way or not. We're all grateful and should be grateful for being sons and for being fathers. It's a source of tremendous joy when approached in the right manner. So, love and respect.
All right. And Roger?
Yeah, my final words would be, fatherhood is just something that it's been to me that one of the greatest blessings that has ever happened. I'd say, to me, my life started when my child was born. So I don't recall much of what was happening before that, to be honest with you, because it's been totally consumed with Chase and Marley. It's just, you know, that's all I know, and for the foreseeable future, that's all I will know. I'm not interested in anything else but my life with my family. So I think men, if you're not involved in your child's life, you really need to step it up for your child's sake and for their emotional well-being, even more so than the financial. Because what I find is a lot of men, they just say, oh, you know what, like in Fences, when Denzel Washington's character said, you know, boy, I provided for you, you know, and that's what I'm obligated to do. But what about the emotional support? What about, as Mello was saying earlier, what about that teaching, that elder, you know, kind of showing you the ropes and kind of giving you a heads up on what you should be doing in life? So I feel like men really need to step up. If they're not at that point, you really need to be there. And sometimes you're not even just a parent to your own children. You're a parent to many children. There are many children out there. Like before I had my first child, I had 5 godchildren. 5. So there must have been something my friends were seeing that I wasn't even seeing within myself. But, you know, the men need to step up. That's the bottom line of it.
Excellent. I'll just add some really quick stuff adding on here. I've known Roger I've been blessed to know Roger and his family for a long time. And I'm saying this in a good way. When he's around his kids, he's a totally different individual. And it's beautiful to see the evolution of it. It's wonderful. Like, we'll be on the phone and he'll go, Marley, cheese. So I'm backing him on that. next thing up, one of the things I say to men, especially who have kids, is that God willing, your kids are going to live a long time. They're going to live in a place that they have. First of all, you hope that they have a picture of you in that house.
Wow, that's powerful.
And then the second thing is when people come over and point at that picture of you, what are your kids going to say about that picture, the person in that picture? So we're just going to leave it at that. I need Roger back very quick. There you go.
This is my dad.
There you go.
He's up 40 years old.
There you go. So before we let it go, Roger, you're one of the creative forces behind the Father Project. What are the next steps that people can look forward to in regards to this initiative?
So we're trying to go live with the website. So there's three parts of it. There's an online version, there's a book version, and then we're looking at doing a documentary further down. So the online version should go live by July 1st. That is the deadline right now. So not Father's Day, because it's really about, yes, it's celebrating fathers, but more around the calendar 150. We have men, as men are very slow to communicate, and when it comes to feelings and all of that. So I've been prodding, so it's been a slow grind getting all the men to submit their story. But we've been pushing it. We got some help recently, Mello, from a good friend of mine who has come on board to kind of help push some more men. I'm asking you as well to push all the other Lions Circle participants that haven't done anything yet. So on the website, it will show you all the partners in the project, a little bit about the partners, a little bit about all the stakeholders, the photographers and the designers and web design, etc., everybody that's involved. And it will show you why and how you can get in touch with us and everything, how you can be a part of it. It's an incredible movement.
How many men short are you?
Website will be up.
What?
How many men short are you at the moment?
I don't even want to say. I'm embarrassed.
So don't worry. He's brought in some artillery. Let's just put it that way. We'll discuss that offline. Let's put it that way. But definitely, thank you both for taking time out of your positive, productive schedules, out of your family schedules, and out of your life just to share with us. And we're very excited. And I'm saying this, I'm looking forward to sharing this on a global perspective, to have these stories shared. And I think for every success, there should be a successor. So you gentlemen are doing this for the successors of young men who are not fathers yet, or maybe already fathers that need to have that succession in their life. So we appreciate everything all of you are doing and appreciate it all the time. It's Dr. Vibe here. I'm host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. If you want to check replays video-wise of this, certainly go to my YouTube page. We're looking to get up to 200 subscribers. We're just this away from getting 200 subscribers. If you want to listen to replays of these epic conversations via audio, there's a website address, thedrvibeshow.com. You can contact me, Twitter at drvibeshow.com, and also email address dr.vibeshow.com. Go to the website. There's all the places where you can interact with me. And also, if you want to come on the show, there's a form there too. Before I leave, I'd just like to say one last thing that is going to come up on my screen right now if it behaves. The views and opinions expressed on the Dr. Vibe Show are those of the guests, friends, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Dr. Vibe Show. Any content provided by our guest friends are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. So as always, I'd like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. And remember, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger, and keep a lookout. The Father Project is coming. God bless. Good night.
Good night.